On this week's episode of Say Something Nice with Martin Weiss, the podcast which title is more of a reminder to the host than a promise to the content, we'll dive into the AFC wildcard picture. I have a surprise team that a lot of people aren't talking about, the NFC playoff picture as well. But first, we got coming up now the first holiday in the quote holiday season. I know that everybody thinks Christmas starts on November 1st, but there is a holiday coming up on Thursday called Thanksgiving. And I like to think it's the most unique American holiday that there possibly is. It's really all about eating as much as you can, spending as much money as you can on all the different sales, the capitalistic society, here we are, and football. To me, when it comes to Thanksgiving, football is really the only redeeming factor in this holiday's history. It really masks a genocide, an invasion of this country. But it's okay because we eat macaroni and cheese. And honestly, without Thanksgiving, would we still even eat turkey? I did the research on this 3 years ago, waiting for the Lions to kick off one day, because I was very annoyed at the fact that it was Thanksgiving and that there was a parade in which no one was throwing anything at all. It's a parade where you just literally go and watch the parade. Someone from New Orleans would look at that and be like, well, that's very dumb. And as someone from New Orleans, I looked at that and said, that's very dumb. But, you know what? A quick aside, aside from my Thanksgiving rant. In college, I was dating a girl. I went to her house for Thanksgiving. We watched, now, for me, Thanksgiving has been a football holiday. It's really the only holiday that football exists on, right? Christmas, you may have a game or two, but Thanksgiving is about football. Christmas is really a basketball thing. Football is Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is football. So imagine my surprise when after the Lions played, which is in that early game, that's the game when you go and you connect with your family, you talk to everybody, you double-check and make sure mom doesn't need any help in the kitchen to the point where she kicks you out. That's what you do, all of that during the Lions game early on. Sorry for all the people in Detroit that will be tuned in heavily to that game. But, guys, I'm just letting you know from a nationwide perspective, that is definitely the I'm checking my phone game. But imagine my surprise when the girl I was dating in college, after the Lions game, they turned off the TV and started playing the Michael Jackson Experience on the Wii. I had never been more upset. I was stranded, kidnapped. And my phone service was such a way that I wasn't able to stream. And then I'm at my girlfriend's house. How much streaming can I really do without being rude? That's why these days I let everybody know I'll be watching the game. And the games I'll be watching this Thursday, Bears-Lions, that's a snooze fest. But it will be interesting to see if Mitchell Trubisky can survive a national game. Another national game, because he didn't the last time. I know he played all 4 quarters on Sunday. But we'll see what it looks like when everybody's watching. Cowboys and the Bills. I'm going to get to the Cowboys in a second. And the Bills in a second in general. But this game is one that, it's a good Thanksgiving game because sometimes the Cowboys suck. And the Bills are actually pretty good, but it'll be fun to watch Josh Allen just throw the ball all around the field. Expect the Cowboys win there. And then Saints-Falcons, which, 97% of the time is a great game. This year, it's going to be pretty, Falcons, even though they've had their resurgence recently, they're coming back down to earth. They never really left where they were at. They just improved. They were never the worst team in football levels. It was a lot of the coaching type of deal. They were never as bad as a Miami or a Cincinnati. So Atlanta's going to win some games. They will not win on Thursday because they turned it around against New Orleans. And if I know Sean Payton, he is not going to let that go the way it did the last time around. Anyway, enjoy your food, enjoy your family, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Watch as much football as you can, as many snaps as you can. And just remember this one fact. Green bean casserole was started after World War II by the Campbell Soup Company in order to make consumers purchase more of their products, because after the war they had all these cans of canned soup that was in their pantries, and nobody was eating it because canned soup sucks. So Campbell Soup Company, somebody in the basement down there came up with a recipe And the instructions were to use something that the consumers already have in their pantries. Never forget it. So after Sunday, I like to try to look back and take a big picture look on Sunday. Okay, what did we learn today from watching these games? What are we waiting to see here? I thought that we would learn something about Green Bay and San Francisco in those games. In that game on Sunday, I didn't learn much. And without further ado, I think that the conclusion I came to was that there is not a solid team in the NFC. Like, there's plenty of good teams. But every one of these teams has a potent flaw that will just, you can feel it rearing its ugly head when it's least needed. I'll just go through the playoff picture real quick. The Minnesota Vikings, up with another, they're currently in the 6th spot, second wild card, at 8-3. The Minnesota Vikings, outside of maybe one other team, maybe the Dallas Cowboys, have the most talented roster in football. Between Diggs and Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, Dalvin Cook, the offensive line is solid. That defense, Aaron Kendricks, Danielle Hunter. The Vikings have some guys that can really ball. The only problem is they paid Kirk Cousins all that $30 million guaranteed. Kirk Cousins is not a $30 million player. What's going to happen in that moment when you need your quarterback to make a big play, that game-winning drive, because they've stacked the box. There's 9 people in the box. Dalvin Cook is not getting off. The Vikings and the Cowboys have a very similar breakdown. But Kirk Cousins is not going to be that guy to get you that win. And unless you believe that you can scheme your way through it, unless you can go out and get a lead. I know Dalvin Cook is up there in terms of rushing yards, top 3. It's going to be tough for the Vikings to really progress, because just remember 4 weeks ago, Stephon Diggs is he going to get traded? Is Kirk Cousins the answer? All of these different things. I get he's been playing like an MVP the last few weeks, but do not forget the body of work. Everybody talks bad about the Redskins and their organizational ineptitude. The one thing they didn't do was give Kirk Cousins $30 million. Seattle Seahawks. It's the first wild card. They have, I think, to me, have the shot to be the best team in the NFC. But even with Russell Wilson playing at an MVP level, this seems like a situation in which they're going to run the ball to death, and that's just offensively inefficient. When you have a quarterback at the level of Russell Wilson, you want to try to avoid third down. That's what good offenses do. They avoid third down. The way you avoid third down is by getting first downs on first and second. The way you do that typically is by throwing the ball on first and second down. The Seattle Seahawks run the ball on first down more than any other team in the NFC. They're the only team in the NFC with an MVP candidate at quarterback right now. A legitimate MVP candidate at quarterback. Sorry to all you Kirk Cousins fans who I just talked about 2 seconds ago, but it's not realistic. If they let Russell Wilson go and let him fire it out, I think they got a shot. But they lean too heavily on Chris Carson and Rashad Penny and just running the ball and counting on Russell to get it done when they need it. And also, sneakily, I know it was just one play or one game. That interception that Russell Wilson threw in the 4th quarter against the 49ers, Phillip Rivers-esque. Now, again, he's only thrown like 2 or 3 to Phillip Rivers' 20 on the year. It just felt weird, and I felt the need to say it in a moment where I was, bashing all these other quarterbacks to not be able to get the job done. Russell Wilson is someone I eminently feel it has the ability to get the job done. And so I feel like if I'm going to bring up all the times he did, I should probably bring up the time that he did it. On to the Dallas Cowboys, the leader in the NFC East at 6-5. Jerry Jones said it the best today. He intimated the best, I should say. The Dallas Cowboys coaching staff is just not up to par. Now, it's Jerry's fault. He's the guy who does all the hiring and the firing and all the talking and all the everything. But the Cowboys probably have the best three wide receivers, the best wide receiver trio in football right now, with Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Randall Cobb. I mean, maybe you have a Godwin, Mike Evans, O.J. Howard discussion. Maybe Julio Calvin Ridley discussion. Unless I'm blanking on another group of dynamic wide receivers like that. I think the Cowboys have, if not the best wide receiver room, top five. Top five running back. Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith on the defensive end. Michigan alum Jordan Lewis, go blue, on defense. This Cowboys team, honestly, Jerry said it. He said, with this level, the makeup of this team, I shouldn't be this frustrated. This team should win the NFC East by a long shot, and the fact that they're 6-5, and that says a lot more about them than it does about the rest of the league. When you look at their wins, you have Giants, Redskins, Dolphins, Giants again, and then the Eagles, who knows what the Eagles are. Those are 6 wins against 5 teams that 4 of them are definitively bad. Redskins, Dolphins, Giants, Lions. 1 of them, maybe, Eagles. We'd like to think the Eagles might be good. Now, their losses, Saints, Packers, Jets, Vikings. Saints, outcoached. Patriots, outcoached. Packers, outcoached. Jets, dare I say, outcoached? Like, that's the reason why this team is 6-5 and not. This team should have like 2 or 3 losses. This team should be one of the best. If Sean Payton was coaching this team, if Bill Belichick was coaching this team, it'd be a Super Bowl contender. It'd be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Outside of now, they're saying, well, they'll be in the dance, so of course they're a contender. Even with Dak and his limitations, like I think Dak Prescott he's a winning quarterback. He's not gonna lose you games. And with Zeke and it's just especially where the offense has looked under Kellen Moore, it's just hard for me to stomach that this Cowboys team, if this Cowboys team had good direction, it'd be a lot better. I liked the Green Bay Packers out of the NFC before the season started because when in doubt, you go with the best quarterback. It's generally how I've been picking games my whole life, and it'll get you more wins than losses. But there's something weird about this Packers offense because, okay, maybe Mike McCarthy had Aaron Rodgers looking pedestrian, but their 3 losses, the Packers' offense has looked bad. He's made Aaron Rodgers look like Brett Hundley, look like the backup. It's made it look like when Aaron Rodgers got hurt and like there was no sense in playing in Green Bay any further. I mean, and even some of the wins, he's had some his stats have not lined up to where you would expect Aaron Rodgers to be. Now, he seems to be all on board. He seems to be into it and has a good relationship with Matt LaFleur on the surface. But another thing that's very concerning about the Packers, this is the second West Coast gaffe that they've had where they came out and just got flattened out. Just came out, flew west, and got their heads kicked in. And I got news for you. Between San Francisco and Seattle, Green Bay is probably going to have to come back out west. Second team in the NFC is the Saints. Now, offensively, it's been a lot of smoke and mirrors with New Orleans. And as I'm a big New Orleans fan, they're going to win the division. They're going to get they will likely get the first round bye. And hopefully in that bye, we can see if Alvin Kamara in the next couple of weeks, because they have nothing to play for, or very little to play for after they get to 10 wins, hopefully Alvin Kamara can be healthy. Because he hasn't been the same player that he was with Mark Ingram in the backfield. And you'd like to think that hopefully it's just his overuse and it's just been that he's been nicked up a little bit. Drew Brees going down with that hand and then Teddy Bridgewater coming in and filling it admirably. Sean Payton should really be getting looked at for Coach of the Year because you name another MVP-level quarterback that can go down, and Drew Brees was playing at an MVP just as soon as 365 days ago, and have his backup quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, come in and ball and play really well and get picked up by a great defensive effort and the Saints rarely make special teams mistakes. The thing that I would be concerned about is it seems like the last few weeks the defense has been giving up more points than normal, and it really comes down. This New Orleans Saints. Here's the thing about them: they're a good team, they're a very complete team, but they are star dependent at a certain level of what they do. The Saints need Michael Thomas to do well. That's just flat out period. Like if Alvin Kamara got hurt, it would. Don't get me wrong, they'd rather have him than not, but they have to have Mike Thomas going to play well. The other thing the Saints need to have, they have to have Marshawn Lattimore. And if Marshawn Lattimore is not 100%, it's going to be an issue. He is eraser. I mean, in the first 6-7 weeks of the year, Lattimore gave DeAndre Hopkins the blues, Tyler Lockett the blues, Amari Cooper the blues, Mike Evans the blues, Allen Robinson the blues, Larry Fitz the blues, and then got hurt against the Falcons, in which the defense gave up 26 points. Saints are very injury dependent. Every team in football is, but it's not a good strategy. And finally, the San Francisco 49ers. Their defense is amazing, but we saw what happened against the Seahawks. And we saw what happened against the Cardinals the 2 weeks beforehand. Jimmy Garoppolo in a 2-minute drill, good luck. If that team can't rush for over 135 yards, 140 yards, if that team's not getting like 4 or 5 sacks, if that team's not getting first downs on first and second down, if that team is in third and longs, and that team is depending on Pretty Boy Jimmy to get him the dub, it's just not going to work out that way. Better hope they have Mostert, Tevin Coleman, all those running backs, Juszczyk, all those running backs in good shape and ready. Now, I will say the 49ers do play a style of football that plays real well in January. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to thud you. I like the Saints coming out of the NFC. I like Seattle after that, and then the 49ers. But in any event, none of these teams are whole. None of these teams are dominant. And it speaks to a bigger thing in football. I don't think any team is dominant in football right now, especially the Patriots. So if you watch NFL Red Zone, especially with Scott Hanson, that's the one I subscribe to, Team Hanson. We don't speak on the other guys. No, I'm just kidding. I actually know Andrew Siciliano. He's a decent guy. But Scott Hanson calls the last 10 minutes of the fourth quarter of the 1 o'clock kickoffs. It's called the witching hour. It's where losses become wins and wins become losses. We're kind of in that point of the season. It's like the witching week. Around week 10, 11, 12, you have some teams that started out poorly, started out like 1-4, Pittsburgh, and somehow are in the playoff hunt, like Pittsburgh. So, as I was sitting back this weekend watching the games, I tried to see if I could pick my dark horse candidate to just ruin somebody's season. Like, it's going to be weeks 15, 16. And they're going to be fighting for a spot, and they're going to go up against a team with like 3 losses and give them the 4th one and bump into, and then they'll lose home field and all of that. Ladies and gentlemen, look out for the Tennessee Titans. I know. Tennessee is the most forgettable team in football. True story. When I worked for the NFL, I had to take a test, just a football aptitude test before I started my first day. The first question was just a blank sheet of paper, and it was list all 32 teams, head coaches, and quarterbacks. I listed 31 of them. And for the life of me, could not remember the last team in the AFC South. Couldn't do it. I'm sitting there knowing that I know it. I had to do that trick that it works every so often for me in college, but you wouldn't know the answer to the question, so you keep taking the test in hopes that maybe you didn't know the answer to number 3, maybe number 7 will jog your memory for number 3. Yo, I got to the end of this test, And it wasn't until there was a last section that had jersey numbers on it, jerseys and numbers to identify the player. It wasn't until then that I realized I had forgotten the Tennessee Titans. So I understand if perhaps you haven't been seeing what's been happening in the last few weeks. But since they made the change from Marcus Mariota to Ryan Tannehill, it's just been the difference of 16 points a game for the first 6 to 29 over the last 5. That's almost double. Tannehill's leading in the NFL in yards per attempt, which is like the new age version of completion percentage. It makes a lot of sense because completion percentage doesn't account for yards the ball's traveled in the air. So if you got a guy like Sam Bradford who complete 85% of his passes, but they're all 2 or 3 yard dump offs. Yards per attempt, it's not perfect, but at least shows that he's stretching the ball down the field a little bit. Ryan Tannehill right now is first in the NFL by a wide margin at 9.2 yards per attempt. His passer rating is third in the NFL. And not only that, he's done what I like to call the backup quarterback syndrome. See, we only see what happens on Sundays, but everybody else is there Monday through Saturday and actually knows what's going on with these teams. They go up in practice. They see what the deal is. Somebody told me once that they knew that Jacksonville was done as soon as they paid Blake Bortles. Now, he was a former defensive back in the NFL. And I asked him, how do you know that? And they said, because we go up against these guys every day in practice. I know. This is him speaking as if he was a member of the Jaguars at the time. He was speaking on like Jalen Ramsey's perspective. So you're saying Jalen Ramsey knows that he's better than Blake Bortles, better than Nick Foles. Jalen Ramsey knows this. And he knows that quarterback's going to get paid more money than him. And he knows that quarterback has to be good in order for him to reach any type of individual success. But once you make that big deal, he also knows that that's a backup defensive lineman, that's a backup cornerback, that's your third wide receiver that are all gone into Blake Bortles' contract. Effectively, you're hamstring yourself in winning. I say all that to say, those Tennessee Titans defenders, they probably had a pretty good idea who Marcus Mariota was. And they probably had a pretty good idea that they weren't going to win jack with him behind center. They make this change, and I'm not saying Ryan Tannehill's a world beater, because he's not. But it gives the team a new energy. It gives the team a new boost. And not only that, they have a straight dude at running back. Derrick Henry is an animal. He's going to get 1,000. He'll have 1,000 yards next week. We talk about running backs finishing runs. Lower your shoulder, make the defensive back pay for coming up and having the nerve, the audacity to try to tackle you. Derrick Henry just finishes seasons. That 99-yard run against Jacksonville, that was on Thursday Night Football, like week 13. Derrick Henry, he has a legitimate shot at winning the rushing title, and you haven't heard much about, I know it's all been Nick Chubb, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook. Derrick Henry's right there. He's like 24 yards behind Dalvin Cook on the year. They're a good defensive team with Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson. They have good corners. Jarrell Casey's a force up front. And special teams, they don't really make that many mistakes. You'll remember it was the block kicking against Kansas City that helped them eke that win out. Former Belichick disciple Mike Vrabel seems to have this defense and this special teams unit clicking. And now that they have some juice at quarterback, look out. I think the Titans could make a real push for the wild card. And the way it all breaks out, they have AFC South opponents for most of this remaining schedule. They can mess around and win the division.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, hell no.
All right, so this week's Oh Hell No is coming from Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby is currently serving a 3 to 10 year prison sentence, having been convicted in 2018 of drugging and sexually assaulting former Temple University employee Andrea Constand. Constand is just one of a number of women who've come forward to accuse Cosby of assault and rape. His alleged victims number in the dozens. The rumors swirled for years, and yet Cosby still claiming it is he who has been wronged. In an interview with Black Press USA on Monday, Cosby alleged his conviction was a conspiracy. It's all a setup. That whole jury thing, they were imposters, he said, before claiming a juror was overheard saying, "He's guilty, we can all go home now," before the trial began. And then she went in and came out smiling. It's something attorneys will tell you is called a payoff, Cosby said. He also claimed that his incarceration was political and vowed not to admit any guilt. "I have 8 years and 9 months left. When I come up for parole, they're not going to hear me say that I have remorse." So Bill Cosby, facing 10 years in prison, still is not remorseful. That's an oh hell no if I ever heard one.
I have a weird habit of relating every single thing to sports. And when you read me this story for the first time, I thought about flipping on TNT 30 minutes before tip-off of the national game and catching the last half hour of Shawshank Redemption, which was inevitably on TNT either prior or after the Thursday night game. And at the end of that movie, I hope I'm not ruining it for anybody, but it's one of the best movies ever. And if you are a basketball fan in the mid-2000s, you've seen it on cable a million times. But Andy asked Red, "Did you really do it? Did you really commit the crime that has you in prison?" And Red says he's the only guilty man in Shawshank. So that means to me that everybody else in there was lying about their innocence. Because while Andy may or may not have done it, and honestly the movie never answered the question, they don't get all those people wrong. And they didn't get Red wrong either. And they didn't get Bill Cosby wrong either. It's like Slim Charles said in The Wire. If it's a lie, we fight on that lie. Bill Cosby knows what he's done. We have a good idea of what he's done. All his victims know what he's done. Honestly, it's kind of like one of those, every time you hear Bill Cosby's name, it's like, dang, he didn't die 6 months ago? And that's kind of where I'm at with him.
I feel... Yeah, that's a very fair point. I feel like he's going to pop up, every once in a while, and people are going to be like, damn, he's not dead yet? All right, well, our second oh hell no comes from the underground of New York. You may have seen there's a video going around of a bunch of people eating Thanksgiving dinner on the subway.
I saw it.
Ain't no way in hell I'm eating dinner down in the New York underground with them rats.
So I saw this on Twitter, and it was like the Twitter caption I saw was just like, "New Yorkers move different." What the is wrong with y'all? First of all, that train is disgusting. I've been to New York one time, and he actually, ironically enough, went to New York one time. 2 days after I got back, was offered a job in New York, and I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'll take LA. LA is it for me. I'll take an hour worth of traffic rather than 15 minutes on that train any day of the week. However, the idea that you put all that food on that subway train, what a waste of resources. And you know what really is wild? And people who don't live in like these major mega cities may not understand. But like, do you understand how many hungry people you had to walk past to stunt on Instagram and to stunt on Twitter? How many people was laying outside with no shoes on, hungry as shit? Now maybe y'all boxed it all up and gave it to some homeless people after on the way out. Maybe. But in any event, that's just gross. I'll put it like this. My sister lives in Brooklyn. She does not allow you to sit on her furniture if you rode the train. Now, why might you ask? Because the train is that foul. She's gonna have a train blanket for you to sit on, or gonna kindly ask you to change into some inside clothes. But y'all want to eat.
on the subway. What's wrong with y'all?
Thanks for listening to Say Something Nice with Martin Weiss. You can listen or subscribe on SoundCloud or Apple Podcasts app. Make sure you leave a review. Thanks again for listening to Say Something Nice with Martin Weiss.